Hello, dear friends. Welcome at Integral Body Institute. Today, life is about ethical marketing, and we have very special guest, Andrew Brown. And the reason why I decided to invite Andrew for this live is because it's such a important topic at Integral Body Institute. Since 2012, we have the chance and privilege to educate hundreds of practitioners. And so often I hear from our practitioners in the field of body work, breath work, qigong, or meditation that they struggle to bring their message out there. They struggle to market themselves. They say, I love doing what I'm doing. I love working with people, but I don't have a skills, marketing skills, or I'm afraid of putting myself out there. And since I know Andy, he is a beautiful combination of an expert in marketing and business, but also he deeply understands holistic world. He himself is on the spiritual journey, so I think he will be very interesting conversation. And briefly, I would like to introduce Andy. He is influenced from an early age by Jungian psychology and immersion in a diverse range of cultures and disciplines that inspired a deep interest in human nature and culture. His curiosity had led him to studying Russian politics and research and writing a dissertation on organized crime in Russia, to a 6-month journey living in a jungle in Borneo to foster community relationships. He is a researcher, entrepreneur, mentor. He's founder of Curiosity Labs since 2012, helping several initiation launch successful products like Netflix, Square Payments, and Madonna, and has mentored over 200 entrepreneurs while living in San Francisco and Boulder, Colorado. He's a creator of Curious Entrepreneur program that helps practitioners express their talents more widely, a journey that began in Nicaragua in 2017 after a chance meeting with Giten Tonkov and a profound first breathwork session. So let me welcome Andy Brown. Hi, Andy. How are
Hello,
you?
Nis. Hi. Nice to see you.
Great to see you, and thank you for joining us for today's live. And this subject is very dear to my heart also, because for many years I've been developing my skills as a holistic practitioner, and I think this is such an important skill to have. So I think your expertise will be very um, beneficial and informative for our audience. So maybe let's start. What is your background in business and marketing?
Yeah, and first of all, thanks for the invitation, Nis. I love everything that you are and that you do. And I'm really appreciative that I'm given the opportunity to talk today and to chat. So thank you. And it's not often we get a chance to speak at the weekend.
Yeah.
So it feels relaxed. So my background started in London. I got a call one day. I posted my resume, posted my CV up online. I got a call just out of the blue for a job at a record label. And I got the job, and I spent the first 3 years understanding. My job was to understand music fans, which was absolutely ideal for me because I absolutely love to understand people. And I spent 3 years understanding the relationship that music listeners have with the music and with artists. And there I learned a very important skill for entrepreneurship, which is empathy and listening and understanding why people listen to music, or why they do certain things, why they like artists. And after taking some time out in Borneo, I moved to San Francisco. That was in 2012. I was drawn to San Francisco. At the time, it had a very open, very entrepreneurial, very experimental culture, and it still does. And there, because I was surrounded by entrepreneurs, I developed the confidence to create my own business. And I created a consulting and a training company called Curiosity Labs, basically helping teams go on learning journeys and empathy journeys. And the reason I took these teams on their journeys is they wanted to understand their customers, which is a really important aspect that's often overlooked when you market and when you create offers that are really meaningful for people. And I did that for a number of years. In 2017, as you mentioned, I met Gitan. I started to serve wellness entrepreneurs, which felt more meaningful. And yeah, since then, I've created the Curious Entrepreneur, and I help practitioners now express their talents more widely. So I would say that this conversation, I'm not a marketer, but I have extensive experience as a business owner working with marketers. I've made a lot of mistakes on the journey, which I can share. And hopefully I can provide a good perspective from a business owner or a practitioner perspective.
Great, beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I think it's such an amazing combination because for last years, as you mentioned, you are supporting wellness businesses, holistic businesses, and I think it's so unique because I came across a lot of marketing or business experts that are really very much focused on a hardcore business, hardcore kind of strong marketing, and that is really not fluid to wellness very often. So I really like, and I work with you also we work together developing IBI online school. So I know how I really value that expertise of yourself. But the question I would like to ask now is a question that comes very often from our students, and the question is about how does a practitioner get started in marketing themselves and or their practice? What is the first step? Like somebody finished just, let's say, BBTRS breathwork training or MER myofascial energetic release training in our school, and they have amazing gifts that you can see they have amazing talent. They start helping people. What's their first step?
Yeah, great question. I know it's often the most challenging first step. And I think it starts with asking the right questions. And I notice a lot of practitioners are asking either what channel should I be on, or they might be asking how questions, like how do I market myself? And the how and the what questions, they have their place.
Often from our students.
Sorry, come again, Nis?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Cool. And I think that the deeper, the more fundamental questions to start with are why market? Like why market yourself? And why market your practice? And when you start exploring this question, and it's really a creative process, that is when we get deeper and deeper to the truth of what we're actually here to do. And quite often this question is overlooked when we market ourselves. We try to kind of do marketing. And often the best marketers are those that aren't trying to do marketing. They're actually just, they're in their essence and they're in their gifts and they know what they stand for. So the first question is really why market? And the second question is who? So if the first question is why do you do what you do? The second question is who do you serve? And I would say this is the most overlooked question of all the questions particularly for practitioners. And it's again, it's not something that you necessarily sit down and just decide one day, kind of rationally. It's an ongoing process of exploration where you identify the people that are most meaningful, that bring the most aliveness to you as you help them. So those would be the two questions that I would actually start with. And you can journal on those over a period of weeks or even months. And the process itself can be very creative and actually very healing as a process.
Great. It's interesting what you said about that. Those two questions are often overlooked, and I remember at the beginning of creating Integral Body Institute, 2012, 2011. The why question was always with me, with my heart, because I know what is my why. My why is to serve. My why is to share my passion, my gifts. So the why was always present. But very often when I was developing the school, and the question from some marketers were, who is your audience? And I would say, everybody. Because in essence, it is true. I mean, except of children and but in essence, it was my thinking. And then I realized how important over the years it is to narrow down and be really clear. Who are you talking to? What is the message? How you build the message to your audience, because it's tremendously important. If your audience are women or men, what is the age? Because you adjust your language and you adjust your message depending to your audience. So I totally agree that narrowing down and being really crystal clear about who is your perfect client, or who is your perfect client, it's so essential and underlooked actually.
Yeah, that's a great point. I do challenge people to say, can you describe your ideal client in 25 words or fewer? And it's not something, again, that I think there's a lot of pressure to decide on kind of your niche audience. And what I'd say to people, because I talk to a lot of practitioners who come to me and they say, I really am struggling. I've been spending months doing every different kind of exercise, and I can't decide my niche. And what I would say to that is, don't pressurize yourself. Realize that it's actually an ongoing creative process where we get closer, and as we stand in our why, in what we stand for, and make a commitment to it, the shift is from getting clients and getting customers to attracting those people. And there's an ongoing process of listening over periods of months, if not years, where we get closer and closer. I think the other thing to say, because it's a big question, that one, is that in choosing an audience, you're not choosing that audience for life. I would say make a commitment for a period of time. I usually think a year is a good time period. Once you've decided to commit, and build a sustainable practice around that audience, but then also know that you can serve other people.
Great. I really like what you shared about this exercise on journaling about your perfect customer or client, or describing it in 25 words. And I would like to ask you a little bit more about it. How is that process like? You journal and you describe it more like what's their age or interest or personality. How go ahead with this exercise? I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. So I think what you want to get to is describing who they are, and that could be the kinds of, it really depends on the sector, right? The most important thing is to describe how you help them. So you can describe who they are. You could also describe the issue or the struggle or the challenge that they are experiencing. And you can also include the benefit as well. So how are you helping them through doing a series of sessions or through joining a program with you? What is potentially the end transformation that they experience? So I would say a little bit of who, and most importantly, the challenge or the struggle that they're experiencing. And that in itself is a challenge in 25 words. So
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. So what came to me is a question about my own position at the moment with developing Integral Body Institute online branch. And let's say we have a practitioner who already ground themselves into basic marketing understanding, and the question is how we might take the work to the wider world in those who need it. So
yeah.
like right now, Integral Body Institute reaches about 30,000 people, and my intention is to how to reach and how to build our network, let's say, to 100,000. So how to kind of bring that momentum and go really wider with the marketing.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll have your own perspective on this, Nis, which I'd love to hear. And I think also it's a question, how to take the work to the wider world, to new audiences. It's not a question I can necessarily answer myself. I think it's actually best explored together. And I know that there's a lot of solo practitioners out there. And I would encourage people to actually join with, say, at least one other person if you feel called to explore this question, and if you're taking the work out to new audiences. I think in some modalities, like body work and breath work, Reiki to a lesser extent, we're at the very beginning of this wave. And when you look at yoga and you look at the number of people who are interested in yoga, according to some research that I've done in Europe and the US, you have about 150 million people in those two continents. So just to give you a kind of relative picture of where body work is, there's about 1 million people who are interested in body work. And with breath work, it's about 700,000, or at least it was 3 months ago when I looked at the data. With Reiki, it's about 10 times as popular as breath work, so about 6-7 million. And I think over the next 5-10 years, there's going to be a real growth in popularity in these modalities. I think the question then is, to whom do we actually take this work out to? Again, that goes back to what we just talked about. And then how do we talk about the work, which we're going to potentially talk about in a bit? Because, like people who go into a furniture shop, people don't buy a mattress, they buy a good night's sleep. So people don't buy breathwork sessions, for example. They actually buy the benefits that you bring with the tools in session on that journey. And those benefits, as we know, are numerous. For everything from feeling freer to a better sense of self, to being able to express oneself more fully in the world. So yeah, there's lots of I think opportunity is the wrong word, but there's lots of potential for people like us who have these tools, which I think are still in the hands of relatively few.
Mm. You mentioned about this incredible growth in next five, potentially incredible growth in next 5 years in the field of body work, breath work, yoga, these holistic healing modalities. And I think big part of it will be the last situation with COVID, because with the lockdown for so long, people will need to get some help, some help to release the stress, fear, anxiety. There will be a lot of cases with depression, I believe, in next years. And so now my question is about what is the most effective way to building trust and credibility as practitioner? Because if we want to think about our practice as ongoing process, which is not just 1 month, but maybe a few years, 5, 10 years, we need to be recognized as somebody who is trustworthy, somebody who is offering practice that works, practice that has solid background, not only in holistic understanding but also in science. So how do we create that marketing around that subject?
Yeah, so it's another great question. I think there are a number of ways to build credibility and trust. And one of the first kind of goes back to, the work that I did in the music industry and since, and that is in empathy and understanding. And when we go out into the world and we connect with each other, and like we're doing now, there's enormous power in asking people if you could actually understand what their aspirations are, and what their goals are, and what their challenges are. And I think a really good way of building trust, drawing on a lot of the qualities, a lot of the innate qualities that we have as practitioners, is to, particularly if you're starting, just to talk to one person every week who's in your who fits your ideal client profile, and you can build trust. It's amazing when you go out to people and just say, look, can I have 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to understand, where you're at right now. And so for me, that's a really good way of building trust and momentum. I think there are other ways as well. Partnering is another way. So what I call, and this is something that I learned from a friend of mine about 5 years ago, and it's how I built my business, was around anchoring with an organization or with another practice that has credibility among the audience that I want to serve. And I built my credibility. It took me about a year to land the Netflix account for my previous business, but I persevered and I was persistent. And then I built my credibility around that business, because I could then go to other businesses and say I work with these guys. But it doesn't have to be a big company. If you're just starting out, be humble and go to someone who is established, who may be a solo practitioner, and ask if you could partner with them. Because it's much easier to go to an existing river and help the flow of that river than it is to create your own river.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing that I see a lot of practitioners not doing is they'll train with a reputable organization. So let's say biodynamic breathwork, and they won't draw on the credibility of that organization when they're marketing themselves. And for me, that's a pretty easy win, because as we know, Gitan has been pioneering breathwork since the 90s. and he's trained thousands of practitioners. And even through that association, when you market, can be a powerful way of presenting yourself in a way that's credible, particularly if you're just starting out.
Great. And I think I would like to add also to building trust in marketing. For me, also over years, it was about listening to the audience. And I remember a few years ago, I was studying one of the biggest public speaking academy in London. And the founder of this academy, he's brilliant coach, he's brilliant speaker, and I learned so much. And he teaches a lot of tools that are very manipulative, but they somehow works for subconscious mind, and people do get hooked to it, even though they know, okay, this is manipulation, but they just somehow get hooked. And I was very fascinated by his approach, and I was kind of for 6 to 8 to 10 months following his formula in our community, and I start observing that people get a little bit allergic to it. People start sensing that there's it wasn't coming from the heart, it was coming more from the mind or from the formula. I wasn't able to embody it, and I was just checking and testing. And then I noticed that it's not going to work. It's not going to work because it's not coming from my essence. For this particular coach, it works because somehow this was his essence, and it works. It didn't feel like it's kind of fake, and I couldn't really follow this formula, and so I think listening to our audience is important. And then when things are not working, just dropping and being honest. Okay, I had a period when I make mistake perhaps, or I was testing something, and then just checking what else works and bringing that qualities into the community.
Yeah, it's a really good reflection. And I mean, I don't know how you are with kind of putting yourself out there these days, whether that's been a journey, in terms of different ideas and different offers, and because there's an interesting shift, I think, that happens when, there's so much fear and self-doubt around putting ourselves out there. And if we're testing an idea, if we're testing marketing or offers with people, which absolutely is a very valuable thing to do, we often get our identity caught up in that idea or that offer. So we're looking for validation of it. And the focus is on us. Like, the reason that we have fear and self-doubt is because we're focused on ourselves. But if we go out and the reason that we're going out is to learn about our audience and is to serve, there's quite an interesting shift that happens where fear just dissipates, because you're being part of something that is greater than yourself, and you're not focused on yourself, you're actually focused on the people that you're serving. And I would highly encourage people to actually practice that as a kind of muscle and habit that you build.
That's very interesting, because I think fear and self-doubt is one of the main qualities that stops many practitioners to put their message out there, for various reasons. For fear of being judged, fear of not being good enough, for fear of not being able to communicate clearly, etc., etc. And so I like this approach, what you mentioned about shifting from our focus on ourselves and bringing that into service, being in service. And for me, also breaking a threshold about fear and self-doubt was also accepting that my message will be also disliked, and there will be people who will judge it. Not everybody will like it, not everybody will love it. There will be people who really like it and benefit from it, and there will be people who are judging it. And I notice myself also when I see somebody presenting something or doing their marketing, there are sometimes ways that I really appreciate and like, and sometimes I don't like, and there's a big judgment about it. And so just accepting that part in kind of loving way, it helps me to really have a courage that even though my message can be obvious for somebody else, but there will be always people who will benefit from my message, for whom my message will be something beneficial, new, and transformative. And I really try to focus my message on those people to whom I possibly can serve, not worrying about people who might judge it, or for whom it might be so obvious. So I think it's something about, for me, that humbleness and an open heartness and service.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I might add curiosity to that, because when we come from all, all of those spaces that you mentioned, our capacity to listen is completely different than if we're coming from a place of fear or of self-judgment. And it's actually a really good idea. So let's say that you're developing an offer for IBI, or you're developing a website with an offer on it, to actually test it with people and to listen to actually aspects that they don't like, or aspects that are confusing or unclear to them, rather than, and this is what happens naturally, is that we have a tendency to gravitate towards what they like, because we're looking for that approval. And certainly in my experience, and the experience of people that I've worked with. And so, yeah, looking for the data that is helpful, that will help you actually optimize and change an offer so it's more meaningful for people, is a really good practice.
Great, I like it a lot. Many times I notice also, and I remember myself starting my sessions with Lomi Lomi Nui massage in beginning of 2000, when I was starting up as a body worker and massage therapist. And I often struggled with the languaging, because I was an expert of modality, but I would go a little bit more technical, and for general people, they're not even interested in it. So my question is, from your perspective, how do I talk about the work to attract new clients, to attract new customers?
Okay, so this is a question that comes up a lot, and like, how do I talk about the work? And it's a good question, but I think it can be reframed into a better question. Because when I ask, how do I talk about the work, my focus through that question is on the work. And that's fair enough, right? Because, you, for example, have been studying these modalities since 2008. And it's your life and your work. And so you're looking through the lens of your own worldview. The reframe I'd like to suggest is actually more from your client's perspective. And that question is, what are my clients' biggest challenges? And that could be health challenges, it could be leadership challenges, depending on what context you serve. And how do they describe those challenges in their own words? And there's a great piece of advice I was given maybe 3-4 years ago. When you go out and you talk to people, and I would highly encourage people to do that, to ask them and to then note down exactly how they describe their challenges. So, for example, I could ask you, you would have a different set of challenges within the context of IBI and taking the work out to the wider world with IBI, as you might do, say, with health challenges or leadership challenges in your local community. So it's important to set that context and to ask those questions. And from there, the shift again that we talked about from the focus on myself or on my modality to the focus on my client happens through that reframe. And then talking about the work becomes talking about their challenges and how you can help them. And then the solution that could be breath work, or it could be body work, or it could be an integration of all these beautiful practices comes in at a later stage.
Great. Wow. Something that came to me also as a question to you as an expert is, I notice how marketing changes, especially over last year. Since March last year, I notice so much shifts happening all over the world. And so what do you think is the outlook for the digital marketing landscape over the next few years? What's going to happen? Where are we moving towards? And what's your view on that?
Yeah, I may not be the best person to ask, but I do have a perspective on that. And I would encourage people to get multiple perspectives. I would say one of the shifts that is already happening is from kind of this getting clients to attracting people. And it's a very different energy. I think people, particularly, in the spaces we serve, are getting really sick of marketing that's pushy, or that's false or manipulative. So I'd say that's one shift that is already happening. Another shift I think is happening is from huge quantities and to numbers of going really broad to fewer numbers of people and more quality in terms of the relationships that you have. And I think this suits practitioners. You don't need to have hundreds, even hundreds of people that you market to. And what's happening with a lot of AI and a lot of automation that's coming in is that we're kind of becoming more oblivious to all of the different marketing messages that we're receiving. So if you can actually offer more of a personalized approach to things and you focus on fewer people, you can actually build a successful practice around that. I think there is some interesting stuff happening in AI that's coming, and if people are interested, I went to a talk by a guy called Roger Hamilton. He had a presentation called Marketing 5.0, and in it he describes a lot of the shifts that are happening and are likely to happen over the next 10 years or so. So I'd check him out.
All right. Thank you. I like always in our interviews, in our podcast, to give the audience some practical steps. So let's imagine that now we have audience watching us, and what can practitioners do today to move forward after this live, after tonight or tomorrow? What would be the first step you would encourage just to get the message out there? Where to start?
Yeah, well, it depends at what stage practitioners are at, I would say. But let's say, for the sake of what we talked about, let's start with how to get started. I think it goes back to those two questions. So why market yourself? Or in other words, why do you do the work that you do? What is a deeper purpose? And journaling on a question which helps to formulate what's called an origin story is a really powerful and very healing, can be very healing process, particularly when you go and you start to share it with people that you trust. And the question is, what adversity have you overcome in your life that has shaped who you are today? So what adversity have you overcome in your life that has shaped who you are today? And of course, we've all experienced multiple diversities and we have multiple stories, and that could be a point of exploration for people. Or there may be one story. So I would encourage people to journal around that question. And gradually, bit by bit, when it feels a little bit out of your comfort zone, but not into your kind of what Pema Chodron calls excessive zone, share what you've written with another person. So that would be my first, and we actually lead people through this process in small groups, which is incredibly, it's the most meaningful part of the accelerators that we run. The second is relates to the who. And if you're struggling to, like you mentioned, I think with IBI, where you could serve everyone, right?
Yeah.
That's where you were. Start out by journaling around a couple of questions. One is, who or which groups have impacted you, impacted your life in different ways? So what are the individuals, what are the groups that have impacted who you are today? Because you may want to serve those people. And then another one I like is, who would you most like to be surrounded by in, say, 5 years' time?
Interesting.
Like, who could you start to build relationships with now, when you kind of imagine in the future could be surrounded, maybe even face to face, with people who bring you alive and who you can help? Who would those people be? So one looking back, one looking forward, is what I would offer. And may I offer a third suggestion?
Yeah.
I mentioned it before. That's to go out and talk to people who are in your audience, or who might be in your audience. And if you're just starting out, I would highly encourage you to go to people that you know who are in your existing personal and professional network. That's probably the most underutilized resource in marketing, is people that we already know. And there's a bit of a fear sometimes around going out to those people. That's why I notice a lot of people don't necessarily do that, right? Or to partner. as I mentioned before, but to try to have one conversation a week and to not go in with any preconceived ideas, but just simply learn. And, you know, people are so, I think particularly in these times, are so looking for connection that it's a wonderful service that you can do, because it you know, there's very few things of more value, I think, to people than to really listen to them, because those people feel value. You know, we feel a sense of value, and that could just be a half an hour conversation, cup of tea, virtual, you know, or face to face or whatever, and to start asking questions about, you know, where they're at and what they want to what they aspire to be.
Amazing. I like this idea about thinking who do you want to surround yourself in next 5 years. And I want to share with you a quite interesting story that I have had lately, a few months ago, and that was I met somebody that I really look up a lot, and this is owner of Mind Valley, Vision Like Honey, and I follow him on social media, and I knew he moved to Tallinn, to Estonia lately. And I was going to teach in Estonia, in Tallinn, and I somehow really for many months, I value his message, his creation, and I was feeling I'm gonna meet him. I didn't know how I'm gonna meet him, but I was carrying my business card in my pocket every time I was walking around in Tallinn. And I was there for 10 days. And first few days, I was really kind of mindfully focusing, like, okay, I'm going to meet Vishen, I'm going to meet Vishen. And then I forgot about it. And 2 days before I woke up early morning, I went to the coffee shop and I had a coffee. And then over a sudden, he comes in and then he has a coffee, and I couldn't believe it. I came to him and we spoke, we had a chat, and nothing came out from this in a business or in collaboration, even though we exchanged emails. And he offered me maybe one day to offer some breath work, a course for Mind Valley, which is like the biggest online platform at the moment in the world. So I just wanted to share this story about power of also intention and visualization somehow, and
It's
reaching out
wonderful, yeah.
to networking. So if you meet somebody like who is established in their vision, reach them out, and I think it's a great way to network.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And yeah, that's, I think, you very much in your gifts as well.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
How about we close today's conversation with some sort of visualization that you could guide us, or meditation around the topic. What would you offer?
Yeah, let's do maybe a minute where I'll invite just everyone who's listening to find a comfortable spot, and hopefully to have your feet on the ground, and to rest and to breathe, and just to close your eyes. And I'm going to invite you to imagine that you're standing on the top of a mountain. Just imagine where you are. As you look around, what you're seeing, the sounds of nature. I want you to imagine that this mountain represents all of the experiences, the totality of the experiences of of your life, the people that you've met, the relationships that you've grown, the things that you've learned, the stories of adversity that you've overcome to shape who you are today, the tools that you've picked up, all of the people who have impacted your life in whatever shape or form, the people that you've helped, that you've served, that you've inspired. That you are standing at the apex of this enormous mountain. And the issue sometimes is that when we stand on a mountain, on our mountain, it's difficult to see the value of it. It's difficult to see the mountain. So just want to invite you to breathe in an appreciation for everything that you've learned, all of the pathways that have led you to now, to right now. And to know that you already possess enormous potential to help others. Not in a year's time, not in a month's time, but today.
Wonderful. Wow. Beautiful, beautiful visualization. It really touched me because that's so much true. We all have so much gifts, knowledge, and wisdom to share with wider world. And if we drop that fear, if we connect our heart to compassion, we can really reach out to people from that space of service. So thank you, Andy. I will share also Andy's website. It's clap.space if you'd like to reach Andy for some advices or collaboration. I highly recommend him. I work with Andy. He's helping develop IBI online school, and since many, many months we are in close collaboration. So if some of you would like to reach him, check his website, find him, and get in touch. Thank you, Andy, and thank you everybody for joining us for today's live ethical marketing. I think it's such an important topic, especially for us holistic practitioners. I see many of you on the live, so I appreciate your time. If you can share this live to your audience, so many people can see the topic and hear the topic, would be very appreciative. So thank you and have a great night.
Thank you, Nis. Thanks, everyone.